Welcome back, Guardians, to another Dream Team video. I am your humble host, Meesum777, and I am joined here today in the Dalto discussion room with Cranky Crab.
Hello.
And our new guest we have here. I don't think he's ever been in a Yeetcast with us, G-Man.
Hello.
So we've got a lot to talk about here. In fact, if you were joining us live at TDT Productions, twitch.tv/TDT Productions, you would see that we're having to bottle up a lot of this here to try to save it for this video, but we've got a lot to talk about today. What you're going to be seeing in the background here is a beautiful 50.0 KD game that we played. I think we were just playing like Clash or something like that, so you can enjoy that in the background here. But anyway, this is Yeetcast number 8. We've got a lot to talk about. We really do. And you guys absolutely killed it on the last video. Blew up. That was amazing. Thank you guys so much. That was wonderful. So hopefully we can repeat that success. I guess I could say it now. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I mean, I'm required as a YouTuber to say that, right? All right, let's get into this here. So we've got a lot to talk about. So specifically, the topic of today's discussion, what the thumbnail is going to be, is I want to like Destiny. I think there's a lot of negativity in the community right now. And in fact, I was just watching an MTashed video, and right off the get-go, like, I really respect MTashed for this, because the first thing he said in the video was, this video is going to do well. It's going to do better than the videos that I have put out where I try to have fun in the game, and I try to make some goofy commentary. This video where I am going to throw hate at the game is going to do well, right? Because I think it's very popular right now to dislike the game. Right, and there's a number of reasons there's a number of reasons why that is, right? We want to try to have a level-headed discussion as to the state of the game, the future of the game, and a whole bunch of other stuff here. In particular, we have Bungie's reply from COZMO himself on Reddit, just like we had last time, where we're going to be breaking some of this down and discussing, you know, everything here, right? Just as much as we can get into here. I hope we can keep this as narrow as possible, because this has a very high probability of being very lengthy. Anyway, but before we get into this here, did I explain that okay? Does anybody have anything that they have any questions on or anything?
I think I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
All right, so let's start with this one here. This is just the title alone. This is a Reddit post by the username of Korea James, and this is the title alone, and I'll give you a brief synopsis of what he said. He said, as a PvP player, I relentlessly grinded PvE to get perfect synergy god roll guns and complete off-meta builds. That's all gone with sunsetting. I simply cannot invest that much time again. The gist of his post, he had about a novel's worth of posts, which is great. I love when people have well thought out. Like, I think everybody can agree, like, you know, especially you two gentlemen, because you two are very level-headed in Dream Team, can agree that despite whether you like something or you hate something, it's good when there's a well-thought argument put behind it, right? Like, you have reasoning behind it, right?
Yeah.
By the way, G-Man, I'm getting just a little bit of background noise with your mic, just a heads up for you. Sounds
Sorry.
like rustling. It's okay. Just letting you know. So he had a lot of well thought out arguments, and I'm going to boil it way down. So sorry, Korea James, if I miss anything here, if you do end up watching this video, but boiling it way down is that he says that it feels like a lot of power is being taken away from him. Not just power as a player, obviously you're going to be getting your gear sunset, but almost like respected as a player, if that makes sense. Like, he's not going to be able to invest that much time into it again, in a way where he feels like it's worth his time, right? And the second point that he brought up, which is a fantastic point, I hadn't even thought about this, is that he said he spends so much time getting these builds perfect, and a lot of the times they're off-meta builds, which is especially us at Dream Team Productions. What you're seeing on screen right now, in fact, off-meta builds was something that we love to do. He said that it's not going to be worth his time to try to invest all of those energy and all that resource into designing and creating off-meta builds, because it's all going to go away. So what he's encouraged to do, whether intentional or not, and of course somebody decides they wants to mow their lawn right where we're having this. Can you guys hear that?
A little bit.
Okay, we're going to have to roll with it. I apologize. But anyway, is that it's not going to be worth his time to try to make these off-meta builds anymore. It's going to be more worth his time just to focus on purely the meta, right? And of course, everybody has chafing problems with the meta, right? And I don't know if you guys want to throw anything on top of that, any of your ideas or anything that you've been thinking about, before I get into the replies by Bungie, by COZMO himself.
One of my thoughts is just, if they want to make us regrind every season sort of a thing, then I would just like it to be cheaper to do so. Like, if you want me to do it that frequently, it's got to be easier to do. And I think, to me, that's kind of what his comment speaks to. I mean, I guess there is an element of that really sucks if you have that gear now. I don't have anything that I'm that married to, but I've put time into a lot of pieces. And if I was asked to do that every season or so, if they were sunsetting, however that works, if I was asked to do it frequently, I would just like the grind in between to be faster. I don't mind doing it all the time. Like, my understanding of this whole situation is that Bungie wants to do this so they can try things, and if it's broken or it doesn't work, it's going to be gone in a season. Or if they want to introduce something new, again, the power creep argument, right? That they don't want to keep bringing in things that are better than the last thing, because 10 things from now, it's 10 times as powerful. So I get all that, and I think that, to me, that makes sense. I'm not a game designer. I don't even work on computers, but that makes sense to me. But if you want me to grind all the time, the grind's got to be faster.
So an interesting parallel that Tiny Maniac, he's a community member, best friend of mine, brought up is a parallel to a game that I reference all the time when I'm talking to. It seems like I always talk to you about it, Cranky. It's a game called Hearthstone. It's a card game. If you guys are familiar, essentially the gist of it is that you have these cards. They are either a spell or a monster. You put it on the board, you attack with it. They can have different flavor text. It has an attack, it has a health, right? The way that Hearthstone works is that I think it's every like year, I believe, they rotate out the expansions, essentially. So you have a standard, classic, and basic set that never get rotated out. These cards, no matter what, will stay in the game, right? And then you have cards on top of that, which are a lot. Like, that makes up the majority of the game, and those cards are obviously always more powerful, right? And those make up the majority of the deck, and those will end up getting rotated out, right? And they're constantly introducing new stuff. And there's a reason why they do that, because it keeps standard format, which is the format that has like the current expansion plus the classics and basics. It allows them to really keep a good eye on the meta, right? There's no one card that's too powerful or combination that's too powerful, right? And it keeps things fresh, because every year something new comes in, right? It's a good way to do it. And I think that's an idea that Bungie's trying to go for, but I don't think they're executing on it well. Like I said, they do the parallel to Hearthstone, and this is not going to be a Hearthstone discussion, so don't worry, is that they keep something that is always there no matter what, right? No matter what, we know that this set will never be rotated out. And we also know that each new expansion generally has a new mechanic associated with it, and it's very easy to get cards, right? Like you were talking about, Cranky. So I think that's the idea they're going for, and it does help curtail stuff, because like in the wild format, which is like, it doesn't matter what season or what year it's from, you can use it. It is an unbalanced mess, and they don't care. That's what the fun of it is, right? So I think that's what kind of Bungie's trying to go for. I don't think that they're approaching it correctly. I know it's a little bit of a rabbit trail.
You did mention, the basic set of cards or foundation or whatever that stays in the game, right?
Right.
Wouldn't the Bungie argument be that that's what your exotics are?
Yes, but the thing is that you can't make your entire build. So, for example, you can make an entire deck of classic and basic, right?
Oh, I see.
It's not going to be good, but you can make a deck out of it, right? So there's
you can't make an entire character out of exotics.
Exactly. Right. So exotics, of course, and I think that's a great idea, by the way. Like, please, Bungie, don't make exotics something that are bound to a specific season. That will suck. That will really, really suck. But it allows you to have some kind of fundamental baseline level for how everything else is balanced off of as well, because now you can start comparing stuff to the base season. And this is just an idea. Like I said, we've got a lot of stuff that we're going to go over here, and we're going to get to the COZMO replies here in just a second. But that's just an idea I kind of wanted to throw out, because I think it's a great analogy, right? Because it's the same idea. It's the same process that they're doing, right? That's just going to be executed a little bit differently, right? Anyway, why don't we get into the COZMO replies? G-Man, do you have anything you want to add to any of this? I know we've kind of been going on here for a minute.
No, I was just thinking the same thing. That I had the same thought that Cranky had when you were talking about those cards that just kind of remain static, and comparing that to the exotics. So, but I guess, yeah, other than that, I don't really have too much to add. I feel like, if you're into builds, which I'm not really, I don't craft builds or anything like that. I'm more of a casual type of player, but I definitely understand the argument that, for those that invest a lot of time in that, it sucks to not, be able to keep that going. But your exotics are there. They're not going to go away. And
Right.
I feel like a lot of builds are made around the exotic, you know what I'm saying, to have synergy with those. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Let's see COZMO's reply. So this is COZMO's reply specifically to Korean James's post here. He said, "We've seen the feedback around build crafting and how players feel the masterworking is going to feel far too expensive if the gear you put the materials become no longer infusable on a year X months later." Right? We'll share all your thoughts on this with the dev team. Max power levels will be shown in the Season 11, but won't actually be reached until Season 12. Keep the feedback coming. Thanks. So this post did receive a somewhat negative reply. We've seen in the other Yeetcast that we did, Yeetcast number 7, where the negative post, the negative numbers of like downvotes that a post got. And I know that's not like the greatest way, and some people have pointed out like Reddit's not a great place for information. Like that's not our point. Our point is that we are looking at specifically the well thought out, well constructed arguments and Bungie's replies. Like those are the two things that we want to look at, right? In case that's not clear.
Not just all the complaints that are on Reddit. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Anyway. But in particular, this post actually didn't receive that much of a negative score. Like, it actually received, it still received a negative post because everybody's freaking toxic right now, but it didn't receive that much of a negative score, which I think means that, again, this goes back to the thing I talked about back in Yeetcast number 7, is that people want to feel like Bungie is listening, right? People want to feel that they're being heard. One of the things that I'm seeing in the comment section a lot in different terms and people are using, but one person, and I'm sorry, I know you made a great comment, is they use the word tone deaf. They feel like Bungie has gotten really tone deaf to the community, right? That it's like this slow decline into this play the way that Bungie wants to play, and it feels like the community has taken more and more and more out of it, right? And I think that's just the fact that, this was essentially in so many words, hey, we hear you, we're going to pass it along, received at least for Reddit's sake, a relatively positive response, and that, this is something we've seen from Bungie before, but COZMO himself, not DMG04, not the community manager, like COZMO himself replied to these posts, right? I think speaks as to, I think what that's saying here is that Bungie is in fact listening. Like, that's on Reddit, for crying out loud. That's not even like a big, like a official Bungie forum, right? I think Bungie is listening. I think they're playing this wait and see sort of game right now. We're all afraid. I think everybody's afraid. People who hate the game right now, there's a lot of toxicity right now about the game, how it's going to crash and burn. They want Bungie to go under, blah, 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 right? Just in general right now, they're just afraid. I think everybody is scared right now about Destiny, like the future of Destiny, right? With the sunsetting, of course, and just the changes in general, right? For me in particular, the fact that auto rifles aren't getting a nerf at all. In fact, they're arguably getting better with dynamic sway getting a buff, is scary to me, because I think if you were to ask any high-level PvP player, they would say, like, yeah, autos are a little strong, But I think in general, Bungie is listening. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
No.
No, I don't have. I always feel like they listen. I think I mentioned this to Cranky before. Like, I always feel like, Bungie is not in the business of, like, disregarding or ignoring, community members' comments and feedback. They've always seemed to be, soliciting that sort of information. I just think that there's probably just, people just feel that they're not listening, but I don't think that's their intent at all.
Right. And I mean, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, a game requires feedback in order to be successful, right? Very rarely are you able to just one shot make a game and have it be fantastic, especially in an MMO sense. Like, imagine Bungie, but they never got any feedback from the community ever. Never looked at statistics. Never did anything. Like, how much of a weird game this would be, right? You know, because you have to have that feedback. I think like, whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not, Bungie has to get feedback in order to make the game better, right? It's just the way it is. I mean, the game was so much different back in year one than it is now, and that's for a good thing, right? Like, we've divorced so hard and so fast from what it used to be to where we are now.
I guess, so here's my concern. I hope that Bungie learns. Like, listening is fine. Listening is good, but I hope Bungie learns. And that's my bigger concern, because like, coming from D1 to D2 as an example, I think we talked about this last time. D1 near the end was closer to perfect than we are now. Like, it was good. They changed a lot of stuff, and it was good. I mean, I can't think of anybody who was not satisfied with the direction of Destiny as a franchise at the end of D1. So the expectations were super high for D2.
Right.
But they changed everything. And so I feel like here's what I'm saying. While it's a good game, Bungie has made a lot of mistakes. They made a lot of mistakes in D1. They made a lot of mistakes when they changed to D2. And what I'm ready for is for, like, the list of successes to be longer. You know, like, they've learned. I feel like they've learned a lot, and I feel like they want to blow us away. I want to be blown away. I want, you know, the next DLC even, but especially any kind of Destiny 3 to just blow me away. I want to be stunned, and I think that's what they want too. And I think they can do it if they learn from what hasn't worked, because they've done a lot of that too.
Right. And that's actually one of the comments that somebody had made on our YouTube channel, is that they said that it feels like we're constantly waiting for something to be fantastic. It feels like we're constantly, like, on the edge of something great, but it just never comes. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think with consistency, like, I feel like like King's Fall, that whole season in D1, I was super impressed with that. King's Fall are probably my best memories in Destiny. And it really seemed like they incorporated so many lessons to get to that point. So there's times when the game is super great. I mean, I'm new as far as a PvP player. Destiny 2 is really my only serious effort at that. So I didn't play D1 PvP. But I know that, like, Trials, everybody loved Trials in D1, and in Trials in D2, it's not quite the same story, right? So they did something that worked. What happened? Why did we let go of that?
How did we lose the magic? Yeah. How did we go from something that works? How did we not just replicate it? And I think that's what a lot of people were saying specifically about Trials. It's like, why did we change the system? Like, why? Why did we need to? And it does make me wonder if Bungie is afraid of the other side of things. Like, I call it the Call of Duty effect, where you do the same thing every single year, every single time. Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem with the arguments. That works. There is nothing wrong with that, right? You might grow out of it. You as a person might grow bored of it, but if they keep, let's just say, you know, good analogy, you go to a restaurant, right? And this restaurant serves burgers. And it serves some damn fine burgers. And one day you go there, and they, for whatever reason, put an egg on that burger. And you're like, what the hell is this? Right? They're like, we're changing it up. We had to change it up. People were saying our burgers are all the same. Right? And I do wonder if Bungie is, like Trials is a perfect example, if they are trying to change things. Because
they're trying to throw an egg on my burger, is what you're telling me?
I think
bastards.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they're trying to throw eggs on our burgers. That's going to be our new phrase. If they're trying to throw eggs on our burgers because they're afraid that we're going to get sick of the burgers. Yeah. Or, you know, they're going to get backlash. It's like, oh, you just rehashed. I mean, let's be fair. When Shadowkeep came out, people were like, oh, you just rehashed the same moon stuff. And I feel that. Like, I get that. And I think I think we have to be clear as to what we are okay with being rehashed. Because, for example, like, the way that PvP worked back in D1, for me in particular, great. Just do some balances here and there. The trial system was great. I loved it. It was a little bit grindy, but I think they could have streamlined it just a wee bit. Which maybe that's what ended up happening. They're like, let's try streamlining this, and people went, this is terrible, you know. And then you can talk about other things like raids and all this other stuff, like strike specific loot and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think people don't want rehashed assets, but they're okay with rehashed systems. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. As far as content, the systems, I think, should be the burger.
Right.
I think that you need those same systems. I think that and I think that's probably part of the reason people get salty is they feel like that Bungie's giving them old content, old weapons, old gear, not the systems, but I don't know what it takes to develop new art, and I'm sure it takes a lot. I'm sure it takes a lot to develop new landscapes,
assets and such. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm sure that takes a lot of development. But listen, we wouldn't be complaining about that. Like, you could come out with less frequent content, probably. Like, maybe I'll just throw this out there. You could come out with less frequent content instead of every 3 months or so, as long as the content that we did get, even if it was every 6 months, was really great.
Yeah.
And the systems in between were not irritating or disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you had trials from D1 and okay, so maybe it's going to be 6 months before you get another DLC, but it'll be a good one. And maybe the one in the summertime is a good one, and the one in the fall is a great one, like they've always done. And they just do that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that's the thing. But I agree. I think the systems were really broken, and to some degree still are in Destiny. It's not the art. The art doesn't suck. You know, it's not the game mechanics. The game mechanics are great. It's the systems.
Yeah, and that's something else that Tiny had kind of mentioned to me. We had like a long 2-hour phone call because he left a comment on the YouTube channel about this whole discussion, right? And I said and I was like, you just give me the short version of what the issues are. And I said, I gave him like a paragraph. He's like, that's not the short version. I said, the short version or the full version is 2 hours long as to what's going on with Destiny right now, right? But when we were in that conversation, one of the things he mentioned is that he firmly believes, and I'm pretty much in that mindset too. I think it's fair that Bungie is still stretching themselves too thin, right? They are still trying to do too much too often. I mean, I made mention in the Heir Apparent video back when Guardian Games was a thing. I asked the comments if people would be okay if they spent an entire season just fixing stuff, and the general response was, yeah, let's do that. In fact, that sounds like a great idea, right? I think people would much rather have quality over quantity, as I think the point that we're getting to here, right? I feel like Bungie feels that they have to keep up with something, but and I get that. Like, I understand that they need to stay relevant, right? They're trying not to get too far behind because I mean the internet is a turn and burn, right? It's if you're not on the front page, then you're nowhere, right? So I get that. Like, they're trying to constantly like put stuff out, but at the same time, I think if you put out bad, you're going to receive a lot worse of a response than if you take forever and push out great, you know? Anyway, let's get on with some of these COZMO replies here. Okay. Person replied to COZMO and said, materials are so much less a problem than actual just bricking weapons, which I disagree with, but that's fine. I mean, everybody has a different opinion. COZMO replied to that person and said, we're definitely sharing all of the feedback from the players asking to not introduce max power levels as well. So one of the things that I had seen on a previous post in both the YouTube and in the Reddit is that, and for me particularly regarding sunsetting armor, is that this is an opportunity for Bungie to see an idea is bad before they implement it. And that's one of the things I think we see all the time, and I think that's part of the reason why there's so much general disdain, if I may use that word, towards Bungie right now, is that we, time and time again, they say, hey, we're going to introduce a new buff to the game where we're introducing the Not Forgotten. And people go, wow, that sounds really cool. And they go, wait a minute, that sounds just a little strong, right? And they introduce it, and it's awful for like however long it was. How long was the Not Forgotten meta? I don't even know, right? And it takes forever, right? And that's the thing that we go back to time and time again, which is why the Hard Light patch was such a pleasant surprise, right? Because that basically never happens. And I think if we had more opportunities where things we knew would get changed more frequently, like if we felt like if something was like common sense, like this should not exist, or this is obviously too powerful. Insert the recluse conversation we had again. The recluse just off the bat, just like, who saw that and said that's a great idea? You know, like that is so clearly like such a powerful weapon in PvE, right? And it took so long for that weapon to get a nerf, right? In particular, right here, I think everybody is afraid that we're going to have to go through like a year of sunsetting weapons before one just like, we're taking it back, right? And I think,
But maybe not. I mean, to your point about hard light, maybe not.
maybe not, yeah. And I think that's where kind of people are at. Like in particular, like I cannot justify sunsetting armor. I've talked about this before, but I just think that's a terrible idea. I can get sunsetting weapons, right? And I'm not going to rehash this whole conversation again, but like for me, if Bungie released sunsetting and said we're holding off on armor for now because we're not sure, right? I'd be singing Bungie's praises. I'd be like, thank God they listened, right? And I think a lot of people would be as well. Anyway, G-Man, you've been quiet for a minute. You have anything you want to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, so let's roll forward here. Let me go ahead and capture this real quick. So this was a quote from the Dark Below from Bungie themselves, 2014. In the months to come, your quest to become more powerful will have more avenues that lead to satisfaction. The last thing we wanted was for you to look at your favorite gun, helmet, and decide that it's become obsolete. Since the reveal, we've read a lot of ideas for how this could be done better. Your feedback is clear. The time you have invested in your stuff should be respected, right? And this is the Redditor. Make sure I put you in here. Wackenham, clever name. We just made a little comment on that and said history does in fact repeat itself. Get ready to regrind for weapons that you've already spent the last 2 years grinding for, unless they introduce a consumable to bring sunset weapon / armor into the current power level. And we have a lot of responses from COZMO again. Okay, does any questions on what the gist of what was said on that post before we move on to the replies?
No, and I guess for context, I think it's been some years now. We went through that in D1, right? Where basically, like our Fatebringer and all our weapons, got phased out because of changing light levels. They got sunsetted, and then like we got the whatever those consumable materials were, we could bring them up to that light level, and that was so exciting in D1 to be able to get those weapons back. But that's the context of this, is that
right, exactly. They
literally did this before, and then they were like, no, that was a mistake, so we're not going to do it again. But now they're doing it again. That goes back to what I'm saying about learning. Like I don't necessarily know all the answers, but I feel like Bungie has the right intentions and motivations. I'm concerned about their ability to learn from things.
Maybe the title of the YouTube video
I have
will be...
a question.
Go ahead.
And I don't know how relevant this is to this conversation, but I'm just curious. So, like, how much of all the stuff that we're talking about is because of, like, the change that happened with, them being, I guess, part of Activision and then breaking away from Activision and kind of doing this on their own? Does that have anything to do with...
So let me make comment on that. Yeah, let me make comment on that, because somebody had made a comment on how Activision had not been doing well either, and there's a little bit of context, right? Because everybody's like Bungie, and then we look over the fence and go look over at Activision, and there's a flaming pile of garbage that's apparently happening, and they posted a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to link it here, but for context, yes. So we don't know exactly. We'd have to sit down with COZMO, which, by the way, COZMO, Luke Smith, if you want to, hit me up. I'm just saying. I'd love to get a conversation going with you. But anyway, we have seen that Activision hasn't been doing well either, right? We can see right after the schism how things changed, right? How they went to this different seasonal model, how they weren't producing these big releases as often just because they didn't have as many hands, right? And I think that they are trying to act like it didn't affect them. I think they're trying to look stronger than they are. If that makes sense, like we don't need them, like we're still just as good. And I think that people would have, in my opinion personally, maybe I'm the only level-headed person here outside of maybe you two, right? But I would respect the hell out of them if they said, we have far fewer hands, we have far fewer people, the content is going to take longer. Right?
Yeah, and see, that's what I wonder. Like, we don't know what they are dealing with behind the scenes. None of unless you're an employee of the company and on their senior leadership team that makes these type of decisions. But everything from when you're on the outside looking in, everything should be able to be fixed quickly. Hey, this is the problem. Why can't you fix this? But there's logistical things behind the scenes that I don't know that everybody is kind of. Maybe they are. I don't know.
And we can talk about the Voldemort, right? The thing that's affecting everybody right now. And
right. The thing that can't be said on YouTube.
Yeah. And of course, that's obviously having some effect here. And I think everybody has generally been pretty on top of that. I think generally the community is, because they're being affected themselves, have been like, hey, we understand, right? But yeah, I mean, we don't know. The point is that we don't know, right? We can only address what's at hand. And like you were saying, G-Man, we don't get to see the logistics, and that's one of the things that I mentioned in the last video. Is I want to see a conversation. I don't want to see a TWAB. I want to see somebody sit down with something that they can get live questions on and respond to it, right? Yeah. I think that would just really open it up a little bit more. I'm gonna keep preaching that until it happens. So drop in the comment section if your dad is Luke Smith, send it to Luke Smith or something, or COZMO or whatever. Deej. I always forget Deej. Anyway, let's talk about Bungie's replies. Okay? So, reply to this. It's hard for me to speak. This was from COZMO. It's hard for me to speak to this since it's even older than my time at Bungie, and I'll have been 5 years in July. As community managers, we are extremely careful with what we say. We try to be accurate as possible and represent the vision of the entire studio and future-proof our comms as much as possible. Talking about their reply back in 2014. It can be tricky at times since Destiny is a fairly complex game that will be always evolving. Back to the point, the game has changed significantly in the last 5 years, and it's pretty obvious that in the moment that the TWAB was written, we weren't forecasting out all of the possible timelines for the next 5 years to come, Doctor Who style. Infusion changes are what the team thinks is best for the game health going forward. We truly welcome any and all feedback on what you believe these changes won't be good for the game, and we'll continue to share those thoughts with the team. We'll continue to give you details on future plans. If anything changes, we'll let you know. So essentially what they're saying is hey, you can't pin us.
They're saying they stand by it so far, which I'm not complaining about, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, basically.
They do think this is the best thing to do.
Yeah, and specifically to that reply from 2014, they're basically saying hey, we have no idea how the game's going to look, right? It's constantly evolving. Bungie is a moving target, our Destiny is a moving target, like you like to say, Cranky. So it's never something that you're going to be able to say one day, this is the right direction to go, and the other day, this is the right direction to go, right? I think that comes back to, we can cycle that back to being tone deaf, right? Because I think people in general are pretty much in the same voice saying sunsetting probably is not the best idea. Now, it might be a good idea, but right now, probably not the best idea, because the amount of negative is far outweighing the positive right now. Now, there is something to be said as a game designer myself, a little bit studying to game design, is that you have to protect the players from themselves sometimes. There are times where you have to design a game in such a way that the player does not end up ruining their experience for them, right? Which I think is what they're trying to do with sunsetting, right? They're trying to formulate the game in such a way that the power creep doesn't occur to where the game becomes unmanageable, right? It's the same idea as what's happening right now in Trials of Osiris, is that we talked about the idea of skill creep. The amount of people who are playing Trials of Osiris right now is abysmal, right? There's an abysmal amount of players playing Trials of Osiris right now. That's because of skill creep has occurred, right? And I think it's the same idea with power creep. Is they don't want it to get to a point where it becomes like a zit, and they just have to just pop it all at once and take care of something much bigger, rather than trying to start curtailing it right now, right?
So let's say that that's the scenario, for the sake of argument.
Sure.
That's correct, and truly what would happen is, in the long run, the game would be ruined. And I think that that's probably their motivation. I think most reasonable people don't think Bungie has bad motivations. It doesn't make them any money. Can they soften the blow? So that's kind of like my thought on it is, okay, weapons, I can understand, and as long as you're going to give me stuff that doesn't suck moving forward, I don't mind kind of changing things up. Armor seems like the hardest selling point for most people because it takes so much to get there. What if that armor So say it becomes obsolete and maybe you don't want to use it anymore. Whatever your new system is, whatever your new economy is, your currencies, whatever, perhaps you take like masterworked weapons or even weapons that are, or not weapons, armor, and even ones that are leveled up to a certain point, and you make them actually valuable. Give that person some kind of return on their investment. So in this current economy, ascendant shards or the golf balls are the most important, the rarest, right?
Right.
Maybe something that's masterworked gives you all of those golf balls back. Something like that. Like,
Yeah,
make
that's a good idea,
soften
actually.
the blow.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Like, if you have a piece of armor that gets sunset, if you dismantle it, you get everything back. I think that's a fantastic
Yeah.
idea.
I think that's a fair solution.
That's a really good solution, actually. Holy shit. That's actually genius.
You're out here solving problems and kicking babies. You know me.
That's a great idea. No, that's legitimately like a really fantastic idea. And like, obviously it doesn't solve the problem of like weapon sunsetting, because people are going to be upset about weapon sunsetting, right? And I talked about this in some of the comments. Perfect world, Bungie's able to balance everything. We do not live in a perfect world. Balance is very hard. Very, very hard. Right? So weapons, I completely understand. Them sunsetting
But still,
weapons.
walk and chew gum. Walk and chew gum. You can sunset weapons, and maybe we're going to miss some of those weapons. Give us something worth being excited for.
Right, that's what people are talking about in the comments and in Reddit as well. Like give us something to strive for. And in fact, one of the comments in the last video that we had is that there needs to be a viced rapid fire lightweight frame SMG like the Recluse that gets cycled into the next season. Right, something to fill the void. That's great. Anyway. I hope people stuck around this far into the video, because that was a great idea. I might timestamp that. In fact, that was so smart. Anyway, let's roll forward. Let's roll forward with COZMO replies. Armor will so kidnapped boy said, can you please clarify one thing from yesterday's TWAB? Core activities sharing the world loot pool mean there will be no unique. No, man, my gosh, this wording is terrible. There'll be no uniques other than the one armor set. And COZMO's reply, so essentially saying, there won't be like a unique armor set because the world loot pool will be much more shared. Okay, so here's COZMO's reply. And that was worded poorly. I'm sorry, kidnap boy, but English could have been a little better on that. Armor will come from I can't speak. Maybe armor will come from specific activities like Crucible and Gambit, and turning in tokens at the vendors. But you will get weapons from the world loot pool listed in the TWAB from doing these activities or turning in tokens at the vendors. So, for example, you would always get Crucible armor from turning in tokens at Shacks. But you might get it in the Gambit. You might get the Gambit sidearm for turning in Crucible tokens as well. So it's essentially saying that they're spreading out the loot pool a little bit more.
So basically, you can get you've got your specific activity pool, like you're saying, Crucible or Trials or whatever. Then you have a world loot pool that comes from multiple sources. And what you're saying is they're taking that and expanding it to like all possible sources.
Not so entirely, but they're little bits and pieces from what I understand, right? Little bits and pieces, which it has its strengths and weaknesses. Here's the solution. Ready for this? Vendor rolls. Why can't I buy a vendor rolled Swift Ride or a Fake Cries Foul or a Hard Truths or something?
When we've played with these ideas, right? Like, I suppose in a sense that's how Menagerie works, right? And then didn't we have like gunsmith bounties in D1 where you could pick the gun and like you had to do the things and then get the the vendor that specific role that you wanted.
Yep. And I don't know why, because like here's the weakness. Here's the weakness of having the world loot pool diluted a little bit. The weakness is that if you are going for something specific, it is now harder to get, because there's, let's say, instead of looking for one weapon out of 5 weapons, you're now looking for 1 weapon out of 10 weapons. It's now harder to get. But at the same time, you now may have access to something you didn't have access to before. For example, I never play Gambit. I hate Gambit. But it's undeniable. The weapons that come from Gambit are fantastic, right? So now I might start getting some drops from the Gambit loot pool in my Crucible drops, right? Cool. So it's a trade-off, but I would much rather there be vendor weapons for like a chunkier price. Like I'm talking like maybe 100 tokens, something like expensive, right? But you know exactly what you're getting, exactly, down to the barrel perk, exactly what you're getting. That's what I would like to
Now,
see.
vendor role meaning that this is the only way it is, or you can customize it.
You can literally buy it from the vendor. Like, there is the engram,
Right.
and
But
then
you
there
have
is the stuff
you
right
have
there.
that weapon. There's like Felwinter. Like I would buy Felwinter and it doesn't change.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So it's
Yes.
not customizable in any way. I don't get to pick
No,
my
you buy that
barrel.
weapon. And it
Okay,
should
I
always,
gotcha.
generally speaking, just in terms of balance, it should always be a good roll, but not a great roll, right?
Right.
Maybe it has like rangefinder Zen moment, which is solid. Like, let's say it's like a hand cannon. That's solid. That's pretty damn solid, but it's not perfect, right? There's
Yeah.
better rolls out there, right? But that's
Right.
a baseline, and that's what I really liked about Destiny 1 is that you could get a palindrome. You guys remember that weapon? A palindrome from the Crucible vendor, and it's like, it was a solid roll. It had like snapshot rangefinder or something like that, and I was like, that's a pretty solid roll, but the Isolin was better, right? So then it became like, how much better is it compared to the vendor roll? But at the very least, the barrier of entry of getting in and getting the weapon was there, which is part of the reason I actually really like the Felwinters quest, despite everybody going to be running around the Felwinters right now, because now there is a very clear baseline for every player, right? Everybody now has access to a good shotgun, so it's not going to feel like you have to go farming forever to try to get this god roll. Like, for example, I never did the Mind Benders farms. Screw that noise.
Right.
I have a pretty good Astral Horizon, but never did it. Never wanted to do it, right? But now I've got a Felwinters. Cool. Anyway.
Yeah. Tell me. So what's left? Because I want to go play some Crucible soon.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We're almost done. Almost done. Almost done. Last comment. Last comment. Let me see here. Oh, this is just something. This is just something memely. Okay, but yeah. So that should wrap us up here then. So that the last comment that he made was making a comment about the Doctor Who thing, but I'm not gonna waste your time with that. So anyway, that is everything. I think we've covered a lot here. Like I said, this was a big one. So if you stuck around this long, fantastic. I appreciate it. G-Man, do we have any comments in the Twitch right now, or are we good?
No.
Excellent. Okay. So I think we're good here. I mean, like I said, we've got a lot to talk about, and hopefully this helped inform and entertain at the same time. The community is in an interesting spot right now. Destiny is in an interesting spot right now. So communication, I think, will absolutely be key. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully you got some new ideas from this. I know I certainly did. Cranky, that was genius. Do you guys have any closing remarks?
Nope.
No.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Cranky's like,
I'll
murder.
I'll just say, we were talking about this a little bit before we started the Yeetcast, but I like this game. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't play it every single day.
Exactly.
There's something about this game that doesn't feel like any other game I play, and I play other games. I play, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I play these other games. Heck, I'm a Star Wars fan. I play that game, but none of them feel like Destiny.
Right.
And that's what keeps me coming back. So, regardless of what they do for me anyway, I'm going to keep playing the game. I've been playing it for, 6 years now. So, I mean, I just don't see, I still like it. Yeah, it could be better. And there's some things that are annoying and aggravating. But all in all, I mean, it's a great game.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I had to kind of remind people in the comment section as well. We'll close with this. Is that some people are like, oh, just move on to a different game. It's like, but you don't understand. I like this game. I love this game. I want this game to be good. I'm not just jumping from one game to the next. I want this game because I like this game. I want this game to be good. I believe it can be. Right? Anyway. Okay, so that'll go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining. Bless your faces, and I will catch you in the next video.
Yo.